All right, good morning. Good morning. We're going to talk today about how what you eat shapes how you feel, which I think most of us kind of know this, but we're really going to dig into the gut-brain connection and that sort of thing. And even more so than weight with this conversation would be things like depression, anxiety. This plays a huge role in that conversation, just as far as gut health and methylation and all that kind of stuff. So let me share my screen. I have some slides to go through. This will be short, probably 10 to 15 minutes. I always like for the recording to be watchable just from a time perspective. Okay, so how what you eat shapes how you feel. We're going to look at the connection between nutrition and emotional well-being. I feel like on social media, which if you guys are not following me on Instagram, I post a lot of stuff there. It's emmy.harts, HARTS.NP. So make sure you're following me there. But I always get a lot of responses and engagement from women when I'm talking about anxiety, and that's part of my story. Um, so today I want to kind of go through some things as far as that goes. And I know I was just looking up some statistics. SSRIs, or like depression anxiety medication, is a $15 billion industry, which kind of blew my mind. I mean, I knew it was high, but there are a couple things that play a huge role in mental health and well-being. One of them is gut, and the other big one is methylation. Those are the two most common things that I see when I'm working one-on-one with women, and what I have found made the biggest difference in my life. So we'll kind of go through some of the practical side of that today. So the food mood connection, again, this is more than just calories, more than just weight and what we look like and that sort of thing. Neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine are literally your molecules of emotion, and depend heavily on the nutrients that you consume. So, what you eat every day directly affects your brain function, energy levels, mental health. And it's amazing. They've done a lot of studies. And, a lot of times I think that it seems like we have to eat differently for a long period of time for it to really have an effect. But now we know that what we eat just even like hour by hour changes what our gut looks like, what the microbiome is, and then has an effect on neurotransmitters. Just side note, your gut produces 90 to 95% of your neurotransmitters. So, having been in conventional medicine for 12, 13 years and prescribing a ton of SSRIs, now studying functional medicine and the significance of the gut, it really blows my mind that we don't do any sort of gut workup or digging into that before we prescribe SSRIs. And not to say that nobody needs those, but certainly if you do need them and you find that you like have to keep going up in dose, or is it working now? Is it not working? Your gut is absolutely the number one place to look, to make sure you're supporting that. So your gut is literally your second brain. The gut-brain axis is a direct link between digestion and mood through nerves and chemical signals. The biggest nerve that creates that connection is called the vagus or the vagal nerve. And we need healthy bacteria in our gut to be able to produce neurotransmitters. Overwhelmingly, the standard American diet, when we're eating quickly, we're eating convenience foods, we don't feed those gut microbes, so a lot of our healthy bacteria die off. Another big part that I want to mention here, just because I think that I have seen a significant increase post-pandemic in a lot of what we're talking about today, is hypersanitation kills the good bacteria in your gut. So we just came out of, several years of wearing masks, hand sanitizer, washing our groceries, bleaching everything, like hypersanitation. So when I look at the hundreds of gut tests that I look at, the good bacteria is low in almost every single patient. And we're looking at the actual different bacterial strains and which ones are low, but we have to have those growing well to be able to produce serotonin and other neurotransmitters. Um, so probiotics produce neurotransmitters that elevate your mood naturally. And when I say probiotics, I'm just meaning the different bacterial strains in the microbiome. And those organisms have to have fiber to stay alive. That's what they feed on. Okay. So the gut pathogens, the things we don't want there, love sugar and trans fats and fried food and all that stuff. That's why we get those cravings. They want to stay alive. And these good, healthy bacteria thrive on fiber-rich foods, which again, overwhelmingly, most Americans are getting are very fiber deficient. Um, the goal for women is at least 25 grams of fiber a day. The goal for men is at least 30 grams a day. Now, if you are not someone who is used to eating fiber, you cannot go from 0 to 60 quickly, or you will feel very poorly. Okay. So let's talk about some key nutrients that boost mood and things that you can go ahead and start incorporating when you're eating on a daily basis. You do not have to overthink this. This does not mean that you have to spend your entire Sunday afternoon meal prepping. I want you to look at it like meal to meal. What are the nourishing things that I can give my body to make sure that I'm feeling well? The first one is omega-3 fatty acids. These are the fatty acids that would be considered more anti-inflammatory, whereas omega-6s are more pro-inflammatory. So omega-3s are any sort of like Mediterranean plant dry derived fat. So fatty fish like salmon, walnuts, flaxseed reduce depression risk and support brain health. If you're someone who struggles with depression, anxiety, and even just from I think sometimes seasonally these things can kind of come on us. These are the foods that we need to be incorporating a lot of, okay? Complex carbohydrates as opposed to simple carbohydrates. So instead of like breads, pastas, sugars, that sort of thing, we want whole grains. I don't love that term, but what I mean by that is quinoa, brown rice, fruit. So all of these have fiber that helps keep your blood sugar more steady versus like bread and things like that, where we're spiking and then plummeting a little while later. Um, Quality protein. So we need amino acids like tryptophan and tyrosine that fuels neurotransmitter production. And vitamins like magnesium, zinc, vitamin D protect and optimize brain function. And I was actually just talking to my dad this morning about vitamin D. Medicare refused to check his vitamin D, and it just made me so discouraged and really angry that Medicare will quickly put you on and approve a depression or anxiety medication, and they will not cover a vitamin D level when that is a huge part of how this all works. And when we're talking about root cause and that sort of thing. And the longer I'm out of conventional medicine, for the most part, I still do a little bit with that, but the more I'm convinced that insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies, I mean, it's discouraging. So with vitamin D, let me go back to that real quick. With vitamin D, more is not always better. So I highly recommend that you have your level checked so that you know what dose is appropriate for you. And vitamin D always needs to be taken with K2, unless you're on a blood thinner like warfarin or Coumadin. Vitamin D plus K2 is what you need. Um, vitamin K helps pull the vitamin D out of the blood and vessels and actually into the bone where it can absorb. So blood sugar and mood swings. Have you guys ever felt like you're going through the day and you're on a roller coaster, like a blood sugar roller coaster? I used to be like this. I'd be like, gosh, why do I just all of a sudden feel horrible? And it really was just my blood sugar riding this roller coaster. You don't have to be diabetic or even have insulin resistance to feel this. So you get a quick burst of energy from a sugary snack, or even like a high simple carb meal, like a bagel, for example. You get that sugar spike, and then an hour and a half, 2 hours later, it starts crashing. You may feel jittery, you may feel sweaty, you may feel anxious, irritable, can't concentrate, and that is the roller coaster that your sugar is riding. So I always say we want to clothe the carbs in protein, fiber, and a little bit of healthy fat, and that really keeps things much more steady. So making sure that you choose a complex carb that has some fiber, you're pairing it with protein and even some healthy fat like avocado, nut butter, or something like that to keep things more steady. Our bodies do not like to be doing this all day long. That keeps your energy and your mood more stable. So, some practical tips for feeling good through food. Obviously, starting strong. So, beginning your day with a balanced breakfast. You can do oatmeal. I don't want you to do oatmeal alone. I'd love it paired with some plain Greek yogurt and nuts. Again, that's putting a fiber-filled carb with some protein and fat. Even like eggs, avocado, that sort of thing are great options. Snacking smart, so choosing nuts, seeds, and fruit over sugary or processed options. So anytime you can choose a one ingredient food as a snack, that's huge. If you are getting things constantly out of a package and have to read the ingredient list, that's not as ideal. Staying hydrated, water supports brain function, and a lot of times our brain interprets thirst as hunger, and we get confused with that. So making sure that we stay hydrated is very important. And then limiting triggers, so reducing caffeine and high fat meals, specifically high in like seed oils and trans fats. That's going to increase anxiety and sluggishness. I actually just posted on my Instagram stories last night that I took the boys out to eat Mexican last night and kind of shared what my go-to was and what food freedom means to me. But I will tell you guys, the cheap canola, vegetable oil, whatever seed oil they cook that stuff in, even if it's the healthier option, it made me feel like my heart rate was elevated. And it's just amazing how when you eat well and then you have something like that, you're like, wow, this really does affect me. Um, so real life impact mood boosting meal examples. You can do an omega-3 power bowl. So brown rice, I'm going to tell you a little trick with that in just a second. Grilled salmon gives you omega-3s and complex carbs. Add a little bit of avocado, and that's a great healthy fat to keep everything balanced. With brown rice, or even like white rice, white potatoes, specifically white rice and white potatoes, but still somewhat pertains to brown rice. If you cool it after cooking it and eat it just out of the refrigerator instead of like rewarming it, it changes the composition into what we call a resistant starch, and your good gut bacteria loves resistant starches. I actually have a lot of patients that use continuous glucose monitors, and we've watched how their blood sugar responds to rice after it's been cooked and cooled, and the sugar response is much more blunted than if it's freshly cooked. So that's just kind of like an easy hack, in my opinion. Pretty easy to do that. And then as far as balancing, like if you do something like toast, I want to make sure that you do a nut butter. That's going to make sure that we pair that, again, that fat, a little bit of protein and carb together instead of just having like a bagel or a donut or something like that. It's going to affect you a lot different. Um, if you can do sourdough, that's even better. And then yogurt with berries, flaxseed, that's going to give you probiotics, antioxidants, and fiber. So you're getting a really well balanced meal there. Let's talk a little bit about chocolate because I love chocolate. Chocolate actually contains compounds that naturally elevate mood and reduce anxiety. And there are some studies that actually look at moderate consumption being linked to improved emotional well-being. It needs to be 70% cocoa for maximum benefits. It cannot be like loaded with, the butter and the sugar and that sort of thing. One of the brands that I really like is Human. It's like HU, and it is kind of written funny, and then Human, and they have it. I find it at Target. Also, skinny dipped peanut butter cups and Unreal brand little chocolate coconut, dark chocolate coconut bars. Those are individually wrapped, which I really like. So you can have like 1 to 2 max and be done. Satisfy the sweet tooth, elevates your mood. Those are really good options. And the skinny dip cups actually have some fiber in them. So I've had several clients test different brands, and that's the one that keeps their blood sugar the most steady instead of having it kind of spiking all around. When nutrition fails, we get 50% increase in mood disorders. And this is a catch-22 because a lot of times when you're feeling really poorly, mental health wise, it's hard to start eating better. Highly recommend that you work with a qualified practitioner to kind of help you navigate that. 3 times higher risk of depression, anxiety, and chronic fatigue when we're not eating well. And this wintertime holiday season, I feel like it can be very easy for us to just like hibernate and eat our way through the season. So making sure that we're balancing, the holidays with the treats that we like to indulge in with some good nutrient dense foods 80% of the time is really key. Um, Alongside, again, traditional treatments for mood disorder. So, again, I'm not saying that medication never serves a purpose. I'm saying that addressing this with medication always leads to a better outcome. So, just to recap, small changes in your diet lead to big improvements in mood and energy. Nourish your brain and gut daily with whole, nutrient rich foods. The more foods that you can choose that are not in a package, the better. If they are in a package, I want them to be like 1 to 3 ingredients max. And just remember that what you eat truly shapes how you feel. And I think attaching food to how it affects our body and not just weight or how we look and things like that is really helpful. All right, I hope that was helpful. If you guys have any topic requests for the new year, I would love to hear them. I always want this to be beneficial to you, and happy holidays.